Hey everyone, welcome back to the Stoner Car Care YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between a clay towel and a clay bar. Stick along with us while we cover that. All right, so to get right down to what you guys came here for, the major differences between a clay towel and clay bar are going to be the levels of abrasiveness and the durability for each one. So we'll kind of go into the nitty-gritty details of when you would want one versus the other and what might work out best for you. All right, so first things first, how do you know if you even need a clay bar? So many of you have probably heard about this, but if you haven't seen it before, a little plastic bag test. You can take that, rub it over your paint. Now keep in mind this might mar it a little bit, so if you want to be correcting the paint after this, but you can rub it over top of the paint and you hear that and you can feel it really well with your fingertips. Like every little bump or imperfection in the paint, a lot of times that's some kind of industrial fallout, iron particles, pollen, dust, there's sap could be on there. There's plenty of things that are embedded particles that end up bonding to the painted surface, and a clay bar or clay towel is what's going to remove that and bring it back to a smooth finish for you. So which one you choose is going to really depend upon how contaminated that surface is. If you're just doing a quick maintenance and it's pretty smooth, a clay towel is probably going to be a little bit better option for you because it's not quite as abrasive as like a clay bar. There's a little bit less chance of marring with something like this because it has these little perforated holes that's going to allow more of your lubricating solution to kind of come to the surface and bring away that dirt or that contaminants and pull them away from the paint without rubbing them into the paint more. Where you have a clay bar, it's really going to bond to the surface and it can sometimes roll over those particles on themselves and leaving marring on the paint. Both of these are abrasive options, so keep that in mind when you're going over. If you have a black car that's super shiny, you're probably going to leave little imperfection marks as you're going through cleaning them, especially with a clay bar. It's going to be a lot more abrasive. So keep that in mind. You want to use as much lubrication as you can to kind of go in there, break up those embedded particles and remove them easily. Another major difference by using a clay bar, if you drop this sucker on the ground, I mean, as soon as you pick it up, there's going to be all kinds of dirt and contaminants already stuck to that clay bar. This thing's junk. You gotta throw it in the trash. You could try and remend it, but there's no way of knowing that that dirt isn't going to make its way to the surface. So you don't take a chance with that. You'll just throw this clay bar right in the trash. Whereas with a clay towel, you can rinse these off really good and it doesn't bond to it like a clay bar would. So if you drop this thing on the ground, bring it back up, wash it really good, make sure there's no obvious contaminants in it, but you can reuse this. A normal clay bar, you're gonna usually get around 6 to 10 cars with a clay bar with something like average contamination. But with a clay towel, I mean, you can do upwards of 50 cars with the same clay towel without it breaking down as long as you're using the right process. So you're gonna get a lot more durability out of a clay towel, but a clay bar is going to be a lot more abrasive. All right, now we're going to jump into some use cases for each of them. With a normal, average, dirty, contaminated paint, we can start with a clay towel. We'll show you how that works. If you have something like a road paint or something stuck to the side of the car, which we do have a little bit on this one, then you want to definitely jump into something more aggressive like a clay bar. All right, so anytime you're using a clay bar or clay towel, what you want to be, make sure you're using some kind of lubricant. While you could use a clay lubricant or a quick detailer or even your wash bucket soap as a lubricant for a clay towel, using an iron remover that has surfactants in there will not only provide the lubrication, but it will also help break down those iron particles. So that way when you're going by with a clay towel or the clay bar, it not only is just shearing off the top of the iron particle, it will also kind of go back in there and dissolve away that iron particle that's below the surface and it's more embedded into the clear coat. So it's a little bit more of a thorough clean when you're using an iron remover as a clay lubricant than just a regular bucket wash. But I'll show you how to use that now. All right, so the process for this is going to be spray this on the paint, the iron remover, then we're going to spray it on the towel, so that way we have lubrication on both sides, and then you're just going to go back and forth. I typically like to do straight lines as best we can because, like I said, you're going to be marring the paint a tiny bit with this. So ideally, we would be going by after this and polishing it. Now I understand what a lot of detailers will offer like a clay and seal process. In that case, you're really not polishing the paint afterwards. So if you're doing that, keep in mind, keep the lines looking good, so if you do any marring, it kind of goes with the light and how it travels down the car. So let's show you how to do that now. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but it sounds pretty abrasive when you first start, and then you'll even feel it as it's breaking down those particles and removing the contamination. It'll get a lot smoother. Now typically with an iron remover, you don't want to let that dry, so kind of keep it moist. You could wet it with water if you want. I'm just going to spray it because it's convenient. So you can see all the bubbles that are forming with this. It's a lot of the surfactants that are providing the lubrication. They're kind of going in between each of the perforations here. So it's kind of carrying that dirt into those particles or into those perforations and then kind of carrying it away. If you have to, you can kind of go back and forth that way. And let me just grab some water and rinse that off real quick. All right, we're back with some water now. Let me just rinse that real quick. All right, I'm gonna dry that real quick. I'm gonna do another bag test to kind of show you the noise difference. All right, so now we just treated this area. It should be free of contaminants, but I'm gonna just do the bag test and hopefully you can hear the difference here. That, you can absolutely feel it with your fingertips. It's hard to kind of get the sound on camera, but it is incredibly smooth where we've treated it and not so smooth where we haven't. So why that's important isn't just because, oh, my paint's smooth now. It's more or less all those contaminants are dulling the paint. It doesn't allow the sun to shine or any kind of light to shine and reflect off the surface, so it kind of dulls it down. And then also it's a lot harder to have any kind of sealants protect that paint. Those sealants aren't bonding to the clear coat, they're bonding to the contaminants that are on top, whether that be sap, tar, pollen, iron, whatever that may be. You want to, whatever sealant or protectant, ceramic coating, you want that down on a clear coat, not on top of any contaminated surface. Next, we're going to talk about the clay bar. It's going to be the same process. Spray the paint with the iron remover, spray the clay bar with the iron remover, go back over it just like we did with the clay towel. All right, now a quick bag test for that. Here's where we did the clay towel, here's where we did the clay bar. We haven't treated that side yet. Hopefully you can hear that. But it is, if I could convey feel through a camera, it is incredibly smooth on this side, and there's a ton of contamination on that side. So we're gonna finish this up really quick and kind of show you what differences there may be. So as you can see, it is just a sheet of water now. So anytime you do a clay bar or a clay towel, that's going to remove any kind of protective coating that you have on there. If you have a ceramic coating, abrasion is really one of the only things that breaks down a ceramic coating. So the less abrasion, the less chance you are going to have of breaking it down. So if you have a ceramic coating, you might be better off using a clay towel, whereas a clay bar, that's going to really be abrasive on the paint. So next we're going to jump into, I think we have some road paint on the side here, so let's see if we can get a good shot of that and show you the differences between using a clay bar or a clay towel in that. All right, so moving on to the side of the car here, we actually have a little bit of road paint. Road paint, it can be touchy, so if you have an excessive amount of road paint, clay bar or clay towel still isn't gonna solve the issue for you. You're probably gonna need some like acetone, a plastic razor blade. Definitely gonna be polishing with it because those road paints, we've done some testing here, they actually have little glass beads in them, and that is just super abrasive on any kind of clear coat. So luckily here, it's not too bad. Hopefully you can see with the other camera, Brett. If you zoom in here, you'll see there's these little contamination marks. It's actually little bits of road paint, and that's something that we can actually go after with a clay bar. Something like this is a little bit aggressive to try and go after with a clay towel, because the clay towel is just not abrasive enough to really be taking that off. But we're gonna show you a 50-50 clay bar versus clay towel, see how much of that contamination it removes. All right, so we're gonna do this front portion here with the clay bar and the rear half with the clay towel. Now keep in mind, anytime you're trying to remove road paint from a car, you have to polish it afterwards. It's just way too abrasive to try and just get away with a clay and seal on something like this. But we'll go in after this, and you can even hear that. Poor paint. All right, and then for the clay bar. All right, I'm gonna rinse these off real quick. So the clay bar versus clay towel, honestly, it wasn't too bad of road paint, but I was kind of surprised both took care of it perfectly fine. So I know the clay towel is a little bit less abrasive than the clay bar, so you probably have a little bit less marring. And it's able to pull that soils or those contaminants away from the surface. But for this level of contamination, both work just fine for that. If you went into a little bit heavier contamination, sometimes you think of like a white car, like a contractor's truck that probably has those mold spores and stuff like that on it. Sometimes I've seen, my personal experience, clay towels had a little bit more elbow grease to get something like that off, where a clay bar kind of knocks it off. But for something like this, that worked out perfectly fine. All right, so that's all there is to it between the differences between a clay towel and a clay bar. I'm gonna get this polished up, get all those marks out. Thanks for joining us on this one. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you in the next one.